I didn't abandon my dreams. I postponed them. For my parents. For my partner. For my children. For later. And later never came. When I was younger, I had a clear sense of who I was. Not in a perfect way but in an honest one. I knew what excited me, what scared me, what made me feel alive. I wasn't chasing success for status. I was chasing meaning. Then responsibility entered my life. Not dramatically. Not forcefully. Quietly. My family needed support. My partner needed stability. My future needed structure. The word sacrifice started sounding noble instead of dangerous. So I began to adjust. Small changes at first. Different priorities. Safer decisions. Nothing felt like a loss. It felt like growth. People praised me for being reliable. For being responsible. For stepping up. They told me I was doing the right thing. And I believed them. Because doing the right thing feels good when everyone agrees with you. My life slowly transformed into something stable, predictable, and respectable. I became the person others depended on. The one who always showed up. The one who didn't complain. The one who carried the weight quietly. From the outside, I looked strong. Inside, I felt invisible. I didn't notice when my own desires stopped being part of the conversation. I didn't realize when my dreams became impractical. I just knew that my life was no longer about me. And that felt responsible. Responsibility has a way of disguising loss as maturity. I told myself that adulthood meant putting others first. That personal fulfillment could wait. That what mattered was providing, protecting, and staying reliable. Those words sounded honorable. But honor doesn't fill the space where your identity used to be. Over time, my days became routines instead of experiences. My goals became obligations instead of passions. Even my emotions became controlled, filtered through what was appropriate for someone in my position. I wasn't unhappy. I was absent. Absent from my own life. When people asked me how I was doing, I answered automatically. Good. Busy. Grateful. Those words became my shield. Because saying I'm lost didn't fit the image. The image of the strong one. The reliable one. The one who never complains. But strength without self-awareness becomes silence. And silence slowly erases you. I remember the moment I realized how far I had drifted. Someone asked me what I wanted for myself. Not for my family. Not for the future. Not for stability. For me. I couldn't answer. Not because I had nothing to say. Because I hadn't asked myself that question in years. My identity had become a collection of roles. Provider. Partner. Caretaker. Problem solver. But not a person with desires. Not a person with direction. Just someone who functioned. I wasn't living. I was maintaining. My life was full of responsibilities, but empty of personal meaning. Every sacrifice felt justified, yet something inside me felt unfinished, like a story that stopped halfway through the sentence. At night, when the house was quiet and everyone else was asleep, I felt the weight of what I had become. Not sadness. Distance. Distance from who I used to be. Distance from what I once wanted. Distance from the version of myself that felt alive. I didn't regret helping my family. I regretted disappearing in the process. No one had asked me to vanish. I had chosen to. Because being needed felt more important than being known. But being needed doesn't mean being understood. And being understood starts with understanding yourself. Which I had stopped doing. My life looked full. But inside, I felt like I was slowly fading out of my own story. Not because my life was wrong. Because my life was no longer mine. At first, the sacrifices felt meaningful. Every late night, every missed opportunity, every postponed dream had a reason behind it. My family needed me. My partner relied on me. My children looked up to me. Purpose can feel like fulfillment when you don't have time to question it. My life became a cycle of giving. Giving time. Giving energy. Giving pieces of myself without asking what I was getting in return. Not because I was forced. Because I wanted to be needed. Being needed feels like proof that your life matters. But being needed isn't the same as being known. No one asked what I wanted anymore. Not because they didn't care, but because I stopped offering that version of myself. I became the dependable one. The strong one. The one who always said, "It's fine." And when you say it's fine long enough, people stop checking. My days were full, but my thoughts were empty. I moved through responsibilities like a machine programmed for support. Wake up. Provide. Solve problems. Repeat. There was no space for reflection. Reflection leads to questions. And questions lead to discomfort. So I avoided both. I told myself this was adulthood. That this was what mature love looked like. That personal desires were selfish compared to family needs. But deep down, something felt wrong. Not broken. Unheard. I started noticing how disconnected I felt from my own emotions. Even when good things happened, my reactions felt muted. Joy came and went quickly. Excitement barely showed up at all. Everything felt controlled. Neutral. Safe. But safety isn't the same as happiness. Safety is just the absence of chaos. Happiness needs presence. And I wasn't present in my own life anymore. One evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room. The house was quiet, but my thoughts were loud. I looked at old photos on my phone. Not family photos. Photos of me. Me smiling without responsibility in my eyes. Me chasing ideas instead of obligations. Me living with curiosity instead of caution. That version of me felt like a stranger. Not because I had changed. Because I had been replaced. I realized I didn't recognize myself outside of my roles anymore. If someone asked me who I was, I would describe what I did for others. Not what I felt. Not what I wanted. Just what I provided. And providers don't complain. They endure. But endurance without identity becomes self-erasure. The emotional distance grew slowly. I became quieter. Less expressive. More efficient. My life worked better than ever. And I felt less like a person than I ever had. No one noticed. Because everything was functioning. But functioning isn't living. I wasn't unhappy. That was the problem. If I had been miserable, I would have changed something. If I had been broken, I would have asked for help. But I was useful. And usefulness feels like purpose until you realize it has replaced your identity. The turning point didn't come with a dramatic event. It came with exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion. Existential exhaustion. The kind that comes from giving without being seen. From showing up without being understood. From living a life that belongs more to others than to yourself. I started feeling like my existence was shrinking. Not in time. In depth. My conversations became practical. My thoughts became repetitive. My dreams stopped forming. I wasn't moving toward anything anymore. I was just holding everything together. And holding everything together leaves no hands free for yourself. One night, I asked myself a question I hadn't asked in years: if no one needed me tomorrow, who would I be? The silence that followed felt heavy. Because I didn't know the answer. My identity had become a service. And services don't have desires. They just function. I realized I hadn't just given my time to my family. I had given my sense of self. And no one had noticed. Because I had done it quietly. Responsibly. Lovingly. But love that erases you isn't balance. It's disappearance. I didn't want to stop caring for my family. I wanted to stop losing myself. But I didn't know how. Because for so long, being needed had been my only proof of worth. Without it, I felt invisible. The truth was uncomfortable, I wasn't sacrificing my dreams. I was avoiding my own identity. Being useful was easier than being honest. Being needed was easier than being known. And in choosing comfort for others, I had abandoned clarity for myself. My life looked full. But I felt hollow. And hollowness doesn't scream. It whispers. There is a point where sacrifice stops feeling noble. And starts feeling invisible. Mine arrived in the quiet. No argument. No crisis. No moment anyone else could see. Just me, sitting alone, realizing that my life no longer felt like something I was living. It felt like something I was maintaining for everyone else. For years, I had told myself that giving everything to my family was love. That putting my own needs aside was strength. That being dependable mattered more than being fulfilled. And maybe, in some ways, it did. But I had confused devotion with disappearance. I wasn't just supporting my family, I was slowly removing myself from my own existence. The more I gave, the less I felt. Not because I was tired. Because I was absent. I had become so good at being what others needed that I forgot how to be who I was. No one had taken that from me. I had offered it. Quietly. Willingly. With pride. But pride doesn't protect you from emptiness. It only hides it. One night, when the house was silent and everyone I loved was asleep, I felt the weight of a truth I could no longer ignore. If my life was only valuable because of what I provided, then who was I without the providing? The answer terrified me. Because I didn't know. My identity had become a role. And roles don't have dreams. They have duties. I realized that love had turned into obligation. That care had turned into expectation. That sacrifice had turned into a routine. And routines don't feel like meaning. They feel like repetition. I wasn't angry at my family. They hadn't asked me to vanish. They had simply accepted the version of me I kept offering. The version that never complained. The version that always managed. The version that didn't ask for anything back. But that version wasn't whole. It was functional. And functionality is not the same as fulfillment. I began to understand something painful. You can give everything to people you love. And still feel unseen. Because being useful is not the same as being understood. Being needed is not the same as being known. I didn't want to stop loving my family. I wanted to start loving myself again. Not in a selfish way. In a human way. I wanted to feel present in my own life. To feel connected to my own emotions. To have a sense of direction that wasn't built entirely around responsibility. I didn't need to escape my family. I needed to return to myself. So I started with something small. Honesty. Not dramatic honesty. Not confrontational honesty. Internal honesty. I admitted to myself that I was tired of disappearing. That I missed having dreams. That I wanted more than just being reliable. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for wanting something for myself. I realized that self-respect is not selfish. It's necessary. I started speaking differently. Living differently. Choosing differently. Not abandoning my responsibilities. Rebalancing them. I allowed my needs to exist without apologizing. I allowed my voice to matter without justification. I allowed my life to include me again. Some people didn't understand. Some were confused. Some were uncomfortable. But for the first time, I didn't disappear to make things easier for everyone else. Because disappearing had already cost me too much. My life didn't become chaotic. It became honest. And honesty feels alive. I started feeling again. Not just duty. Not just obligation. But curiosity. Desire. Presence. I remembered what it felt like to exist as a person, not just a provider. I learned something that changed the way I see everything. Sacrifice is meaningful when it's a choice. But when it becomes your identity, it erases you. You can love others deeply, without abandoning yourself. You can be responsible, without becoming invisible. And you can give, without disappearing. If you're listening to this and you feel like your life belongs more to everyone else than to you, I want you to know something. Your worth is not measured by how much you carry. It's measured by how fully you exist. You don't have to vanish to be valuable. You don't have to lose yourself to prove your love. And you don't have to disappear to be strong. Because strength isn't silence. Strength is presence. And presence is the one thing that makes a life feel real. I gave my life to my family. Now, I choose to live it too. Not perfectly. Not easily. But honestly. And honesty is where real life begins.